Today we're talking about a competition gun, a Glock 34 Gen 5, now with 100% more cocking serration. So the Glock 34 Gen 5, this is the competition model in the Glock lineup, boasting the 5.3-inch slide, tipping the scales at about 22.5 ounces. This is the competition model. It was built around the IPSC standard division box, which is also used in USPSA and IDPA, so it is a competition gun. A lot of guys are going to use it for practical tactical, which is a phrase that unfortunately has popped up on the internet, but I assure you it's the competition model. So we're going to be discussing it in a competition context. Now, I've already got a video contrasting the Gen 5 with my old Gen 5 34 to the Gen 4 17 that I was using in carry optics. And I assure you, I think the Gen 5 is significantly better. I think it's very accurate. I think the trigger out of the box is decent enough. And I think that it is well suited because of the flared magwell that it boasts for competition shooting. In the 9mm minor divisions, all of the divisions where this gun is competitive, except for ESP and IDPA, you can't use a magwell. So the fact that this has this nice, huge, cavernous magwell cannot really be understated. This is a great feature on this pistol, and it makes it outshine some of its peers in that regard. So we'll talk about what makes a good competition gun and why the 34 kind of fits the bill for that. In a competition gun, you're going to want a full-length grip. This does a couple things. You get all your fingers on the pistol, which allows for maximum controllability. You've got more surface area to really build a good weld with your support hand. That's useful for controlling recoil as well as not pinching your fingers or palm on reload. Trigger, as I mentioned, is decent. On the Gen 5s out of the box, this is pulling on the Lyman digital scale at 5 pounds 1 ounce, featuring the 4.5 pound connector from Glock in the gun right out of the box, which is a nice feature to have. I mean, it's not amazing. The IPSC pull weight is 5 pounds in production division, or at least it used to be. They just changed it. So having it just north of 5 pounds, I guess, was a good thing up till now, but you can always go lighter with springs and a different connector. A lot of people are going to say that the Glock trigger, you got to spend $100 to make the trigger passable. Guys, we're talking from a competition standpoint, and I can say pretty much with authority at this point, at least in my own mind, that the aftermarket triggers, like you find on this one, don't really help you too much. The software is really what's going to determine your hits. If you can't pull a trigger straight to the rear, then you can't do it with a lighter, different shaped trigger necessarily. I've tested this using hit factor scoring, and I don't find this to be an exploitable advantage over the OEM one. You can spend your money if you feel like you're getting benefit out of it. By all means, be my guest. But that's what I found in my testing. That'll be a video for another day. And the trigger face is going to be smooth. Of course, if you do want to do a Glock trigger jog, the nice thing is they're not wildly expensive to do. Just a real quick kind of walkthrough. You can polish the trigger basically for free, and that's going to improve it a little bit. You can change the connector inside the gun, and that's going to potentially lower and change the character of the trigger pull, although it's still going to feel like a Glock trigger. You can change out the striker spring, the plunger spring. That's also very inexpensive. So if you just do those modifications, you're in about $40 on a trigger job. You can get over travel stops that install either in the trigger itself or in there. If you have to do that, I wouldn't recommend it. You can replace the trigger shoe on the trigger bar. That's typically about $100. And if you decide to go crazy with the titanium extended lightened firing pins, so you can use the absolute lightest spring there is, then that's going to run you another $100 or so. So if you go totally crazy, you're talking about $250 to $300, but a very basic one for about $40 is going to get you probably most of the way there if you have to have it. Now the 34 is the competition model, so you get the extended controls, or at least the slide lock slide release. I'm going to call it slide release, and you're going to deal with it. Is extended and on both sides, fully ambidextrous for you lefties out there. In previous generations, the mag release was also extended. I don't know that it is anymore. It works well enough. It's where it's supposed to be. It's highly functional. The sights that come on the pistol are typical Glock ball in a cup sight picture made out of plastic, but this time they're adjustable. So when you take them off the gun to throw them away, you'll notice there's more screws on them. In all seriousness, the gun should come with a fiber front and a blacked out rear because it's the competition model. But because practical tactical, unfortunately, is the thing, people want night sights for their 34 for reasons. So I really don't think there's any making everybody happy. So we're all going to buy the gun and then throw the sights in the trash and put whatever we want on it, as per always. Now the Glock optic is actually, the optic system is one of the selling points of this pistol. It gets kind of lambasted on the old internet 4 or 5 years ago, but I've got this on 4 MOS pistols now. This one's got about 5,000 rounds on it. The one in the safe right there has about, I don't know, 6,000, 6,500 or so rounds on it. I've never lost 0. The screws have never backed out. It's been 100% uptime as far as I'm concerned. The big feature is that the rear sight cut is behind the optic body, which allows you to co-witness. We'll talk about the competitors later and why that's a big feature, but you can get co-witness irons even if they are cartoonishly large with an optic mounted on the pistol. And also talking about the sight radius, the 5.3-inch gun, that is a very, very long sight radius. If you are shooting irons in a game like USPSA or IDPA, that is a distinct advantage as far as making sure you're getting the most points based on marginal sight pictures, which is what the practical shooting sports are all about. I've got a video on sight radius if you're not sure what that is and the impact it has on how the bullets impact. You might go check that out. While we're on the slide, let's talk about the nano diamond-like coating, which is what they call their NDLC finish that's on the slide. This pistol has been subjected to daily dry fire for at least 30 minutes a day for about the past 4 months, and all of the wear that it is experienced is right there. There's a little bit of finish that's gone away, and right there's a little bit of finish that's gone away. It's significantly more robust than the old Gen 4 stuff. That said, it's super duper slick. It doesn't stop me from being able to rack it like I do any pistol, but the forward serrations definitely make that easier. So I surely appreciate these forward serrations they decided to put on the pistol. While we're on the topic, these are for slide manipulations, not for press checks. There's no reason to use press checks because this little extractor, you can run your finger over it. It'll tell you if there's a round in the chamber or not. It's sitting below flush on the frame right now, which means there's no round in it. So I don't need to press check to make sure it's there. I can just go like that and know that it's there. But when I have a malfunction, rebuilding a grip is very fast going that way as opposed to coming back here or judo chopping the optic or whatever. The other item that people say has to be replaced on Glocks, and I've never believed to be true because lots of people can shoot itty bitty groups with these, is the barrel. The barrel is fine out of the new Gen 5s. It's supposedly better than the old Gen 4s. I do know that I have printed the smallest group at 25 yards with the Glock 34 of any pistol I've owned, and I've owned a lot of fancy ones. So the accuracy, as far as I'm concerned, squared away. You can't ask much more of a service knife. That's really spectacular grouping. One thing that is different, as I've mentioned in some other videos, but for the sake of completeness mentioning here, is that one of the key differences between this and the older generations is the recoil spring assembly is a bit longer, and as a result, there's less pre-tension to keep the slide in battery, which is a problem if you want to use aftermarket guide rods, which are common in competition circles. Most of the springs are designed around the Gen 4 seating length. Only the ISMI spring, which is on this guide rod from the Glock store, this is the tungsten guide rod from the Glock store I'm testing out, provides adequate pressure to keep the gun in battery. This does not use locking lugs like some of its competitors, so it really does rely on the spring tension to keep it locked up. And because the springs are balanced with the striker spring, you kind of have to take into account like how heavy the recoil spring is with how heavy the striker spring is. So that's kind of a shortcoming of the pistol. It's not really that big a deal, but if you just absolutely want to run like an 8-pound recoil spring, you're probably going to run into issues with the gun unlocking. And kind of snowballing from there onto some of the other negatives, they didn't really address how the trigger guard is contoured on the Gen 5s. With how I grip the pistol, and I've got a video on this if you're interested in recoil management, and that's not really an issue. My knuckle doesn't really rub on these, but I know a lot of people do, and that is a concern. The ergonomics while we're on the grip were reshaped with the Gen 5, and they are significantly improved from past generations. Where it used to feel like grabbing, you know, a 2x4 or a table leg in your hand when you gripped the pistol, now it feels like that same 2x4 or table leg has had the edges eased off, and it's a bit more ergonomic. Honestly, it's significantly improved from the past generations. They're subtle changes, but they really add up to make a difference. Now, some of the questions that some of you are probably asking yourself is, should I buy a 34 or should I save some money and buy a 17? I'm gonna make a whole video talking about the difference between these, but to summarize very quickly, If you're shooting iron sights, the sight radius of the pistol is going to be important to you, and the 34 has more of it. It's going to be a bit more of an advantage. If you're shooting an optic, then the sight radius really doesn't matter because you have a single focal plane. So if you're shooting an optic, then you're probably fine with the 17th and picking a connector of your choosing to lighten up the trigger pull weight. Finishing on a positive note on why the Glock 34 is a good choice is you can take the whole gun apart in about 2 minutes just using either like a ball pin cap or really a 3/32 punch. Some other pistols you need at least 2 different punches, a heavy hammer, jeweler tip screwdriver, etc., etc. You can really get by on the Glock lineup with just a punch in your bag. I've got a link in the description to some Glock tools that are worth keeping in your range bag. It's got a magazine disassembly tool if you need to get your base pads off. It's got a front sight tool and a punch, and that's really all you need to work on the pistol soup to nuts. Now, the Glock is one of the lightest offerings in this segment of pistol. It's only 22.5 ounces, and there's a big movement right now to go towards heavier pistols because of their recoil muting characteristics. So that is a concern. These are going to draw a little bit easier and be a little bit easier to swing around, but honestly, if you know how to fight recoil and return the gun from recoil, it's not that big a deal. You can shoot a Glock similar you can to a Shadow 2 or any of the other heavier guns. You just have to have good technique. As far as the less important stuff is concerned, in the box, which is made of aircraft grade Tupperware and will look fantastic in your favorite junk closet being neglected, in that box is going to be 3 of your favorite Gen 5 magazines with an orange follower. It's also going to feature a joke of a mag loader that will stay in that box being ignored, a nifty bike lock that you can lock people's bikes up at Starbucks with, or a cleaning jag and bore brush. We don't buy the guns for the boxes, I recognize that, but the box is pretty cheesy. And one of the big reasons to shoot Glock pistols, and you'll hear this in pretty much every video that's ever been made on YouTube and features the word Glock and not the word sucks, is the aftermarket. The aftermarket is super robust for these. You can get holsters wherever. You got 1,000 different sight options. All of the optics will fit on the MOS pistol. The sky really is the limit with what you can do with these things. I will warn you that not all aftermarket parts are an improvement. If a part is very inexpensive, less than the OEM replacement, there is a good chance that is not an improvement over the OEM despite being marketed as such. So this is actually the second iteration in this series. The first iteration of the Gen 5s, that's one of these here, doesn't have the forward serrations and it has this cutout here. This cutout is a pain in the rear. When you're gripping the pistol to actually shoot it, I can feel it digging into my pinky right there. Most importantly, when I go to reload, that's how you hold a magazine when you're reloading as you index, is sometimes I would actually hit my finger on the edge of that cutout, and I've actually pinched it and drawn blood a couple times when I've been trying to go fast. So that's really annoying, and I'm really grateful that they got rid of it. So if you're buying one of these used, be sure you're getting one with forward cocking serration so you don't have that stupid cutout. The other benefit if you get one of them is they changed the breech face, and the breech face throws brass more positively now, and that's honestly a change that I did notice in my Glocks as well. But it throws brass with a little bit more authority, and I think they're going to do that to all of the Gen 5s going forward. As far as the competition in this segment is concerned, its big competitors are going to be the Walter Q5 Match, the Sig Sauer P320 X5, and the Springfield Armory XDM OSP. In addition to the OSP is the FN509 Tactical. The FN509 Tactical made the mistake of putting tactical in the name so nobody who shoots competition will buy one. It's actually a really good pistol, but it comes with a threaded barrel and probably the best optics mounting system that's out there currently, but it's also the most expensive. So I've never seen one at a match. On to the XDM OSP, it's the least expensive of the group, but it has a grip safety, which nobody likes, and it says Springfield Armory on the slide, which apparently no one likes either. So that really leaves you with the Q5 Match and the X5. You're like, well, why didn't you mention the Canic? That's not a mistake. I'm not mentioning the Canic on purpose. So the X5 is gonna have a similar issue with the Glock where people say you have to immediately work on the trigger and send Bruce Gray at Gray Guns a bunch of your money. I don't think you need to do it on any of them, but if you do, that's on you. The Q5 is going to have the best trigger if you're a trigger guy. However, it's going to have a higher bore axis with a heavier slide, and the optic mounting system is going to make you give up your rear sight, so you can't really co-witness. which is kind of an issue. But the big downfall of the Q5 is it has a very short grip. It's really a compact grip length with a really weird mag well. That's not very good for competition. Don't get me wrong, the Q5 is still a very good gun, and the differences between all of these pistols is pretty minor, honestly, but people like to obsess about the small differences. The X5 is probably the most squared away out of the box of the whole lineup. It comes with 4 21-round magazines, which is good if you want to shoot carry optics in USPSA, and it's bad if you want to shoot it in anything else. It comes with a magwell, which you can't use in pretty much any division that you shoot an X5 in other than ESP and IDPA. And it comes with a rear sight mounting system that only accommodates the Romeo 1, which is good if you want to use a Romeo 1, but is not good if you want to use basically any other brand of optic. That said, the X5 is a fine pistol as well. It is a soft shooter, it's plenty durable. So that leaves us with the Glock. The Glock's going to let you co-witness if you buy the suppressor height sights, but they're cartoonishly large, as you can see here. You can co-witness, which is huge, and you can accommodate pretty much any optic you want, which is nice. The magazines, and this actually is an important thing about competition shooters, the magazines are comically inexpensive. They're about $21 for 17-round factory magazine. Everybody makes extensions for them for carry optics if you want to do that, so that's a good thing as well. All of the pistols that I'm talking about, other than the XDM and the tactical, sell for about $700. So go to the store, put them all in your hand, and figure out which one you like best. Grab it and never look back. But that's the 34 Gen 5, guys. I'm obviously a fan of the pistols. If I felt like that the pistol was holding me back, I could always go sell a bunch of Glocks and get anything else, but I really don't feel like the pistol's that big a deal as far as the competition is concerned. So I think the 34 Gen 5 actually is a nice pistol and is very well suited in 2019 to be a useful competition gun. As always, I appreciate you guys. If you've made it this far, I sure appreciate it. Please go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will catch you guys on the next one. Unless you're still here, in which case you like to play the comment game that I do from time to time. I need you to talk about the superiority of shorter length slides in competition. I need you to make this so believable that people can't tell if they're being trolled or not. I want top shelf trolling from you guys in the comments. So I'll keep an eye out for them, and if you do it, you will get the heart of the creator, because this is the internet and the comments live forever. Appreciate you guys. Catch you on the next one.